Good morning, legends. Monty Van Dyk and Marc Miles come to you with another hot topic for a Tuesday.
How we doing?
Now, this morning, I've asked Marc to talk to you about a very important topic to help with your sales and with your business in general. Now, too often we hear people talking about, oh, the person's a fake, or I can't do business with him because I don't like him because he's not genuine. So we want to try and overcome those type of objections. So today we're going to talk about how being genuine and authentic can help your business. It's something that I think is very, very important. We've had a few, it doesn't take much. I mean, if you look around, you can look at some of the videos dropped into some of the Facebook real estate groups. And I talk about real estate in particular because that's our business, yeah. So there's one guy in particular up in Brisbane doing videos on a very, very regular basis, and he's taken his interpretation of what being genuine and authentic is as he's taken it quite literally, and he's talking on video exactly like he does in person. And the problem there is that this guy pretty much is dropping the F-bomb all the way through his videos, which, yeah, you don't want to be going. Like, there's being genuine and then there's being crude and rude and disgusting. And I think there's a fine line. Like, at the end of the day, being who you are obviously makes life easier for you because you haven't got that pretense, you don't have that facade to uphold. You can just be yourself and speak how you are. But at the same time, you still need to remain professional and come across that you actually know what you're talking about. So knowing what to say, and more importantly, knowing what not to say. But that's only part of it. For the real nuts and bolts, of course, I'm going to hand you over to the expert, like I always do, and he'll dispel everything I thought it was, and he'll re-school us on what we should, our approach, and what we should be, how we should be thinking about this. So I'll hand you over to the resident expert, and Marc will school us on how to be genuine and authentic, and the pros and cons, and how to do it, and how not to do it, and why. So let's go. Take it away.
Awesome, thanks Monty. I love the intro as always. Well, let's put it this way. I'm not an expert on being genuine. I just know essentially a little bit of mindset stuff that can help us stay in a place of authenticity. Now, some of the content I'm going to share with you is from my personal journey, but also I'm going to start out with a bit of sales-related content in relation to being genuine, as they say. I think the biggest trap that we can fall into is thinking that we need to have all of the answers and be perfect, and fall into the trap of fake it till you make it. And I think that anytime we're putting an aura around faking it till we make it and trying to be perfect for someone else, we actually instantly, innately and inherently create a distrust with the other person, because they can actually feel that we're not being genuine. So we kind of need to shift our mindset, because there can be a sense inside of, I have to say the right thing, I have to do the right thing. And when we're in that place of trying to pretend and get it right, it can actually be detrimental to the sales process. So when I was a sales coach, and when I was a sales coach for an American sales trainer who taught basically bringing authenticity and honesty to sales, we worked off 3 particular principles, and I'll share them with you now. But basically, he was saying that the biggest, elephant in the room whenever you're in a sales situation is that there is inherently existing sales pressure. So one of the first things that you need to do in order to get rid of that sales pressure is diffuse the tension. You need to diffuse the tension by being more of yourself and being more genuine and more honest, because people are actually going to connect with you. The next thing that you need to do is get to the truth. Get to the truth of what's actually going on for the other person. And third principle is you need to become a problem solver. So that's kind of the overarching, how it fits into sales as such. But I guess ultimately whenever we have that sense of have to get it right, have to be right, and the rightness of it all destroys us. Now, when we look at influence, we need to appreciate that firstly, we need a deep level of rapport, which leads to a connection, which leads to trust, which leads to ultimate influence. And if we actually make influence our intention, then the sales tension and all of that disappears. And we can only achieve influence if we've got that trust. How do we build the trust? We be ourselves and speak from the heart. Now, one of the things that I learned very early on as a parent is that there's no such thing as a perfect parent. And if you actually want to have influence on your kids, you've actually got to learn a brand new vocabulary. And maybe you already know these words, but maybe you're just not comfortable saying them as a parent. Now, these words are so simple, yet as parents we hesitate to say them. First one that I had to get comfortable saying was, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. And when a child actually hears that you don't know, but you're willing to explore it and find it out together, guess what? Trust is built and you've got influence. Another one I had to get comfortable saying as a parent, and I hated saying it, but guess what? Parent equals leadership and parent equals leader equals influence. I had to get comfortable with saying, I'm sorry, I screwed up. And it's one of the hardest things for a parent to say because we think that we need to know everything, be everything, and do everything, and we can't show any kinks in our armor at all. But the funny thing is, the more that I apologized to my daughter and showed her where I was lacking and I was working on, there was actually more trust built. Strangely enough, she actually is more willing to follow my lead because I'm more willing to say I'm sorry and tell her where I've screwed up. And also, she is now more willing to say that she's sorry. The next one I had to get comfortable saying was, the story I'm telling myself is. And just acknowledging that maybe I'm creating some meaning around a situation that may or may not be true. And I would simply share with her, look, the way I'm seeing this situation is, and it may or may not be true, but how do you see it? And being able to simply say that to a customer is a very influential phrase because you're coming from a place of maybe I've got this wrong, I don't know, but let's look at this and let's see how we can resolve it together. And they could be the most irate customer on the planet, but when you come from a place of that and a willingness to solve the issue and come with alongside them, they're gonna feel that they can trust you. The last one there is, yeah, this may or may not be correct, but this is just my perspective. Let's see how we can work together on it. All right. So ultimately, being genuine or not genuine, I think when we fall into a place of I'm right, you're wrong, that's instantly a place of killing the connection. And that's the last thing that we want to do. So ultimately on videos and stuff like that, be yourself, but know that being on video, being on social media, your aim is to build influence. How do you do that? Be more of yourself. Be more vulnerable. Share what you're going through and how you've solved it. No one wants to hear all your tragedies and all your struggles, but they do want to hear how did you get over it. So that's why testimonials, that's why sharing other people's successes is always going to build instant influence. The other thing is that for me, I made a conscious choice with social media to be the person out there that's willing to be the fool, but also the inspirational fool. What do I mean by that? Ultimately, I am the person that's willing to make more mistakes than other people and learn from my mistakes. I'm not going to go on social media and say, I've got all my shit sorted, because I don't. And instantly when you do go on social media and say, I'm amazing, I've got everything, and I make $1 million sales every day, and it's not exactly the truth, you're going to be found out one day. So just be willing to go on social or even speak to your customers and go, yeah, well, this is what I've gone through, this is what I've solved for myself and I've solved for other people. Guess what? That builds trust. That builds influence, and that allows you to come from a place of genuine authenticity. And I think that authenticity, when you make that your aim, you are going to connect with more people. And even if you go to a networking event and you go, well, I'm not great at meeting people, but let's just have a chat. Or, hi, my name is, and I don't naturally feel comfortable in all these networking situations, but how do you do it? How do you get comfortable in these situations? When you come from a place of curiosity, you will always be authentic. So that's pretty much all I've got to share authentically.
Mark, that's exactly you've struck, or you put it this way. You've put clarity on some of the things that I've heard and I've felt previously, but just haven't heard it articulated quite as clearly as what you just mentioned. So no, that's fantastic. Thank you. Now, for you guys out there now, you legends would probably have been in a similar position at times where you've had a listing, you know the vendor's a bit overpriced, you've taken it to the market, you've tested the waters, you haven't had a good response because you know it's overpriced, and you have to have that dialogue with the seller about an adjustment on price. Now, I just went through this myself only last week, and unfortunately, like, we're the third agent on the listing, and the original agent, just for the numbers so you can understand the disparity about where the market's at and how some agents out there unscrupulously overprice the property to secure the listing, or as we call it, they buy the listing. This property started out in the marketplace with the first agent nearly a year ago at 1.4 million, and since then it's gone down to 1.2 with the second agent, and then the second agent dropped it to offers over 1.1. We were then appointed, they appointed my team to look after the sale. We listed it at 1.1 because that's where it was left by the last agent. The property is immaculate. You cannot fault the property. It is absolutely stunning. The location is the problem. There's two things. There's a location and price. So we've done everything in the marketing. We've had 100,000 people reached and all the rest. So we've had a very successful marketing campaign. We've had no offers. We've gone back to the seller and we had a discussion in regards to what the problem was. And similar to what Mark said, I approached the seller on the basis that I think, and I could be wrong, but this is where I think the problem lies. So the seller, even though it's so difficult it's a bitter pill to swallow to have to go and wash another 100,000 or 150 grand off the sale price to get it where the market's at. But the resistance point in that area was $1 million, right? So anything over $1 million, no one was talking. So the big thing was to approach the conversation with the seller from the viewpoint that, look, this is the feedback I got. I could be wrong. Let's talk about this. How do you feel? And the seller, instead of being completely obstructive and blocking and closed off to the conversation, was quite open and ended up and hence agreeing with where I was coming from, because we came from that, like a reconciliation, I guess, point of view where we're trying to find common ground and equal understanding, and we achieved that, and that's what I think is proof of, if you're trying to, I guess, in the way of being genuine, trying to what was the words you put? It's
solve the problem.
There we go, solving the problem. That's what I'm talking about. So there we're trying to find a solution, and I think we came up with a solution. And even though it was, yes, less on the sale price, but it means getting the property sold so the vendor can actually move on to the next project, which they happen to already have started. So they do want to make the move. They're quite motivated. So next time you're in that position with the vendor and you've got a listing that's been on the market for a little while, just remember it's your approach and the way, the dialogue that you choose to solve the problem together. And rather than coming at the agent and saying this is what you have to do and try and strong arm them and smash them down in price and steamroll over the top, which isn't the preferred option. I know some agents work that way rather successfully, but in my opinion, it's very short-lived. So I'm not sure whether they get those same clients back a second time with that kind of behaviour. They might have success one time round, but then I think they might just lose that client. I'm not sure. But it's not a preferred option from my side. And if you take the approach that Mark just spoke about, I can guarantee not only will your client walk away feeling valued and that they're being looked after, they'll actually start referring you through to other people as well, and hence your network starts building because you've taken the approach and you're being genuine, authentic, and you've gone there to solve problems. And that's what our job is as agents. So, all right, legends, I'm going to leave it there. I recommend go back, have another listen to what Mark was talking about. Take note of those 3 tips those 3 pointers that he outlined at the start. Summarise those. Try and reflect your own dialogue that you have with your vendors and with your buyers as well, and see how that fits in, and see if that matches those 3 categories that Mark described at the start. Okay.
Can I just leave with one last tip? I think a great powerful phrase to always use is, I'm hoping you can help me out for a moment. Would you possibly be open to a different perspective around how we could resolve this issue? Simply asking the question just gives you a gauge of how open they are to solving the problem. Would you be open to a different perspective on how we could solve this issue? Because I know how important XYZ is to you. That phrase breaks a lot of tension. The other thing I do suggest is feel comfortable in your very first initial meeting with someone to actually map out possible consequences that could happen and get people prepared for those situations in advance. So saying, in 3 weeks' time, we may run an XYZ campaign. It may go this way. It may go that way. If it goes that way, would you be open to? And I know that in those conversations, tension can arise, but I just want to set up the framework right now to let you know that could happen, and let's just be comfortable with whatever arises, knowing that we're both here to support each other. And I think when you address those things as early as possible, people can feel that you're being upfront, truthful, and you're going to do the best thing that's in their interest as well.
Yeah, that's spot on, mate. And listen, guys, and you've heard me say it before, always keep in the back of your mind 2 things. 1, you need to have the hard conversation with your clients up front. If you can't have it at the start, how are you going to have it down the track when you've got offers and you've got negotiation points? So if you can't have that tough conversation right at the start when you're listing the property and taking it to the market and actually talking to them about, like Mark said, possible scenarios. It can go this way, this way, this way, and we're going to have to act accordingly to adjust. If you can't have that conversation at the start, how on earth are you going to have that conversation later when you've got a really good offer, great terms and conditions, and your vendor's stuck and they won't take it? You've got to have those tough calls then. You may as well have them at the start, yeah? And the second thing, remember in real estate, there's not a problem in real estate that price won't fix, yeah? Keep that one up your sleeve. It works a treat. Okay, guys, I'm signing out. See you next week, yeah?
Bye for now.
Thanks, Steve. That's really good.
Click finish.